wheelchair-bound black girl was rejected by her own father until a billionaire made her his wife. Sometimes rescue doesn't come from those who should love you. Sometimes it comes from a stranger who refuses to let the world erase you. Benedicta Wills pressed her trembling hands against the cold metal rim of her wheelchair, her entire body shaking beneath a rain-soaked cotton dress that clung to her like shame. The storm had turned the streets of Grandridge City into rivers of filth, and she had been wheeling herself through them for over an hour, her arms screaming in pain, her palms slick with blood from where the wheels had torn her skin. The glowing entrance of the Halcyon Hotel loomed ahead like a mirage, golden light spilling onto marble steps, warmth she could almost taste. But the distance between her and that light felt impossible. Her father's voice still echoed in her skull. "Get her out of here. I don't care where she goes, just make sure she doesn't come back." Andrews Wills hadn't even looked at her when he said it. He'd been adjusting his cufflinks in the mirror of his study while his new wife, Diane, stood behind him with her arms crossed, her lips curled in disgust. Benedicta had tried to speak, to beg, to ask why, but the two men her father hired didn't wait for words. They hauled her out of the chair, dragged her down the marble staircase of the mansion she'd been hidden inside for 16 years, and dumped her onto the wet gravel driveway like trash. Diane had stood at the top of the stairs, watching, and Andrews never came to the window. Now, alone in the rain with nowhere left to go, Benedicta's arms finally gave out. Her wheelchair lurched to a stop just outside the Halcyon's wrought-iron gates. She gasped for air, her lungs burning, her vision blurring from exhaustion, and tears she refused to let fall. Inside the nylon bag strapped to the back of her chair was everything she owned. A faded photo of her mother dead now for 6 years, a rosary her grandmother had given her before the accident, and a small notebook where she used to write poems before her father found it and told her to stop dreaming. Before we get deep into today's story, please let me know in the comment where you're watching from. Hit subscribe if you're hooked in and ready to enjoy the story, because tomorrow I have another beautiful story to share with you, and I don't want you to miss it for anything. Now, let's begin. 24 years old, and this was all she had left to prove she'd ever mattered. The security guard at the gate noticed her. He stepped forward, his face hard. "You can't stay here. Move along." Benedicta's voice came out as a whisper. "Please, I just need to rest, just for a moment." I said, "Move." She tried to push her wheels again, but her hands slipped. The chair rolled backward slightly, and panic shot through her chest. She was going to fall. She was going to collapse right here in the gutter, and no one would stop to help her. Just as her body began to tip forward, she heard it, the low, sleek hum of an engine. Headlights swept across her face, bright and blinding. A silver Bentley came to a sharp stop just inside the gate. The back door opened, and a man stepped out. Miracle Owens hadn't planned to attend the charity gala tonight. He'd been in back-to-back board meetings for the last 9 hours, his patience worn thin by investors more interested in profit margins than the people his company was supposed to serve. By the time his driver suggested he skip the event, Miracle had almost agreed, but something told him to go. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was fate. Either way, the moment he stepped out of the car and saw the figure slumped in the wheelchair just beyond his door, everything inside him went still. She was drenched, shivering, her head bowed so low he could barely see her face. But her hands were gripping the wheels of that chair like she was holding on to life itself. The security guard was yelling at her. Miracle's jaw tightened. "How long has she been here?" His voice was ice. The guard stammered. "Sir, she just showed up. I told her to leave, but you left her in the rain. Sir, I didn't think." "No, you didn't." Miracle's eyes never left the girl. He moved toward her slowly, deliberately, his polished shoes splashing through puddles as he crossed the distance between them. When he crouched down in front of her wheelchair, she flinched. "Hey," he said softly. "Look at me." She didn't. "Please," Miracle tried again. "I'm not going to hurt you." Slowly, painfully, she lifted her head, and when her eyes met his dark, wide, and filled with so much fear, it made his chest ache. Something in Miracle's memory sparked. He knew this face. Not from yesterday, not from last week, from years ago. His breath caught, but he didn't let it show. "Not yet." "What's your name?" he asked. Her lips trembled. "Benedicta." "Benedicta," he repeated, tasting the syllables like a password to a locked door. "I'm Miracle, and you're safe now. Do you understand?" She shook her head weakly, tears finally spilling over. "No one's safe with me. You don't understand, they'll come for me. My father, Your father," Miracle interrupted, his voice steady and firm, "isn't here. I am." He turned sharply to his head of security. "Bring her inside. Now, get a medic, get her warm, and if anyone tries to stop you, you call me immediately." "Yes, sir." Miracle stood, but before he walked away, he crouched once more and placed a hand gently on the arm of her wheelchair. "Benedicta," he said quietly, his eyes locked on hers. "Whatever you're running from, you're not running anymore." Minutes earlier, Benedicta's day had unraveled in slow motion. She'd woken that morning in the small room at the back of her father's mansion, the one with no windows, no pictures, and a lock on the outside of the door. Diane had stopped pretending to be kind weeks ago. Breakfast had been a single piece of toast slid under the door. Lunch never came. Benedicta had spent the afternoon staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of her father's life continuing without her. Laughter from the dining room, the clink of champagne glasses, Diane's voice, shrill and delighted, talking about their upcoming trip to Milan. No one mentioned Benedicta. No one ever did. That evening, Diane had come to her room with two men Benedicta had never seen before. "Your father and I have made a decision," Diane said coolly. "You've become too much of a burden. It's time for you to move on." Benedicta's heart had frozen. "What do you mean?" "We've arranged a place for you. A facility. You'll be taken care of." "A facility?" Benedicta's voice cracked. "You mean an institution?" Diane smiled thinly. "Call it what you want." No, I'm not going. You can't." But the men didn't wait for her protest. They grabbed her, yanked her out of her chair, and dragged her down the stairs while she screamed. Andrews had been in his study. The door was open. He heard her, and he did nothing. Now, inside the Halcyon Hotel's private medical suite, Benedicta opened her eyes to a ceiling painted with soft gold constellations. The bed beneath her was warm. The blanket over her body was cashmere. She bolted upright, panic flooding her veins. Where was she? Who brought her here? Was this another trap? The door opened quietly, and Miracle stepped inside. He moved slowly, like someone trying not to startle a wounded animal. "You're safe," he said, his voice low and calm. "You're in my hotel. No one can reach you here." Benedicta stared at him, her chest heaving. "Why did you help me?" Miracle paused. He could have told her the truth, that he recognized her face from a scholarship ceremony years ago, that he'd spent months searching for the little girl in the wheelchair who'd vanished without explanation. But not yet. Not while she was still trembling. Instead, he said simply, "Because no one else did." He poured her a glass of water from the crystal pitcher on the side table and held it out. She took it with shaking hands and drank like she'd been wandering a desert. Miracle watched her quietly, his mind already working. Whoever had done this to her, whoever had left her bleeding and broken in the rain, was going to answer for it. But first, she needed to feel safe. "What's your full name?" he asked gently. "Benedicta Wills." The name hit him like a freight train. Wills. Andrews Wills. The tech mogul. the so-called philanthropist who'd been in the news just last month for donating millions to children's hospitals. Miracle's eyes darkened. "Your father," he said slowly, "is Andrews Wills." Benedicta's face crumpled. She nodded. Miracle's hands curled into fists at his sides. He said nothing, but in that moment he made a silent vow. Andrews Wills had thrown his daughter away. Miracle was going to make sure he never got her back. Benedicta didn't know it yet, but the man standing in front of her had once tried to save her life, and this time he wasn't going to fail. What would you do if the person meant to protect you became the one you had to escape? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single one. But before Miracle could ask another question, his phone buzzed. His head of security's voice was tight. "Sir, we have a situation. 3 men just arrived at the front gate. They're claiming they have legal documents to retrieve a missing person, a woman named Benedicta Wills." Miracle's blood went cold. He looked at Benedicta, her eyes wide, her breathing shallow. She whispered, "They found me." And Miracle knew, in that instant, that this night was far from over. Benedicta's entire body went rigid. "They found me." Her voice was barely a whisper, but the terror behind it was deafening. Miracle didn't ask questions. Not yet. He moved to the window and pulled the curtain back, just enough to see the front gate below. 3 black SUVs were parked aggressively outside. Men in dark suits stood in a tight cluster, one of them speaking harshly to the security team. Another held up a folder, documents, official-looking, deliberate. Miracle's jaw clenched. He let the curtain fall and turned back to Benedicta. She was trembling so violently the blanket had slipped off her shoulders. Her eyes were locked on the door like it might explode open at any second. "Benedicta." His voice was calm, controlled. "Look at me." She couldn't. He crossed the room and knelt beside the bed, placing himself directly in her line of sight. "Benedicta, breathe." She shook her head, gasping. "You don't understand. He sent them. My father, he always sends them. They'll take me back. They'll lock me up. They'll—" "No one," Miracle interrupted, his voice dropping to steel, "is taking you anywhere. You don't know what he's capable of." "Then tell me." Silence. Benedicta's lips trembled, her hands twisted in the blanket, knuckles white. Miracle waited. He didn't push, didn't demand, just stayed there, kneeling, his presence steady and unshakable. Finally, she spoke. "I was 8 years old when it happened." Her voice was so soft, he had to lean closer to hear. "We were at a party, one of my father's business events. There was a staircase, marble, slippery. I was running. I don't even remember why." She closed her eyes. "I fell." Miracle said nothing, just listened. "I woke up in a hospital 3 weeks later. The doctors said I'd never walk again." Her breath hitched. My father didn't cry, didn't hold my hand. He just stared at me, like I'd broken something he couldn't fix. A tear slid down her cheek. "My mother tried to protect me, but she died when I was 16. After that," Benedicta's voice cracked, "after that, I became his secret. He didn't want people to know he had a daughter in a wheelchair. It ruined his image, made him look weak." Miracle's fists clenched at his sides, but he kept his face neutral. "He locked me in rooms I couldn't leave, took away my phone, told staff to ignore me. And when his new wife came into the picture," Benedicta's whole body shook. "She hated me. She told him I was a burden, a stain. And tonight she convinced him to get rid of me for good." "Get rid of you? How?" Benedicta finally looked at him, and the raw fear in her eyes nearly broke him. "They were going to put me in a facility, a private institution, somewhere I'd never be found, somewhere I'd disappear." Miracle's blood turned to ice. "They have documents," she continued, her voice barely holding together. "Forged medical reports, fake psychiatric evaluations. They're going to say I'm mentally unstable, dangerous. And once they get me inside, She swallowed hard. No one will ever ask about me again. Miracle stood slowly, his mind racing. This wasn't just cruelty. This was calculated erasure. He pulled out his phone and dialed his head of security. "Talk to me." The voice on the other end was tense. "Sir, they're claiming she's a ward under Mr. Andrews Wills' legal guardianship. They have paperwork, medical documents, a court-issued transfer order. They're saying she's a danger to herself and needs to be placed in protective custody immediately." "Protective custody," Miracle repeated coldly. "Is that what they're calling it? They're threatening to involve the police if we don't release her. Let them try." He hung up and turned back to Benedicta. She was staring at him like he was the only solid thing in a world that was collapsing. "Miracle," her voice broke. "You should let me go. If you don't, they'll come after you too. My father, he destroys people who get in his way. I'm not worth—" "Stop." The word was sharp, but not unkind. Miracle crouched down again, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Don't you ever," he said quietly, "say you're not worth it. Do you hear me?" Benedicta's lips trembled. "I don't know what lies your father told you. I don't know how many people made you believe you were a burden. But I'm telling you right now, Benedicta Wills, you are not a mistake. You are not invisible. And you are not going back to that man." A sob tore out of her chest before she could stop it. Miracle didn't move. He just stayed there, close enough that she could feel his presence, but far enough that she didn't feel trapped. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I know. What if they don't stop? Then I'll make them." She searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. But all she saw was certainty. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "You don't even know me." Miracle's expression softened, just slightly. "I know enough." He stood and walked to the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. "Get some rest. I'm going to deal with this." "Miracle." He looked back at her. "Thank you." He didn't smile, but something in his eyes shifted, something that looked almost like pain. "Don't thank me yet." And then he was gone. Downstairs, Miracle strode into the main security office, where his head of security, Julian, was monitoring the cameras. "Show me the documents they brought." Julian pulled up, scanned images on the screen. Miracle's eyes moved over them with cold precision. "Psychiatric evaluation. Patient exhibits signs of delusional behavior and self-harm tendencies. Court order. Transfer to Street. Raphael's private care facility, authorized by legal guardian Andrews Wills. Medical history. Multiple incidents of erratic and violent outbursts. Every word was a lie. Miracle's voice was deadly calm. "Get me Andrews Wills' file. Everything. Business dealings, legal records, family history. I want to know every skeleton in his closet." "Yes, sir." Miracle turned toward the window, staring down at the men still stationed outside his gate. They thought they could take her. They thought power and paperwork were enough. They had no idea who they were dealing with. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Mr. Owens." The voice on the other end was smooth, practiced, venomous. "This is Andrews Wills. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Miracle's grip tightened on the phone. "Your daughter," he said slowly, "doesn't belong to anyone." Andrews chuckled a sound that made Miracle's skin crawl. "You don't know what you're getting involved in, son. Benedicta is unwell. She needs help, professional help, and I have every legal right to provide that for her. Legal rights built on forged documents." A pause. "Careful, Mr. Owens. You're a businessman. You understand how fragile reputation can be. It would be a shame if your charitable image were tarnished by accusations of kidnapping a vulnerable young woman." Miracle's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. "If you come near her again, I will bury you." He hung up. Julian stared at him. "Sir, what's the play?" Miracle didn't answer right away. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, calculating, strategizing. Then, slowly, an idea formed. Dangerous, reckless, possibly insane, but it might be the only way to protect her. He turned to Julian. "Get me a lawyer. Now. What are you planning?" Miracle's expression was unreadable. Something her father will never see coming. Benedicta couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face. Cold, unmoved, adjusting his cufflinks while 2 men dragged her out of the only home she'd ever known. She sat up in the bed, her hands gripping the soft sheets like anchors. The room was beautiful, too beautiful for someone like her. Crystal lamps, velvet curtains, a view of the city she'd only ever seen from behind locked windows. It didn't feel real. None of this did. A soft knock pulled her from her thoughts. "Come in," she said quietly. The door opened, and a woman stepped inside, older, warm-faced, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. She carried a tray with soup, bread, and tea. "I'm Mama Lucia," the woman said gently, setting the tray on the side table. "Mr. Owens asked me to check on you." Benedicta stared at the food, her stomach twisted with hunger, but shame was louder. I'm not sure I should be here." Mama Lucia sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, careful not to crowd her. "Child," she said softly, "you look like you've been carrying the world on your shoulders for far too long." Benedicta's throat tightened. "I don't want to be a burden." "A burden?" Mama Lucia shook her head. "Baby, you're not a burden. You're a person, and persons deserve to be cared for." Tears welled up in Benedicta's eyes before she could stop them. Mama Lucia didn't say anything more. She just reached over, squeezed Benedicta's hand once, and stood. "Eat, baby. You're safe here." She left quietly, closing the door behind her. Benedicta stared at the soup. Then, slowly, she picked up the spoon. It was warm, rich, real, and for the first time in years, she let herself taste something other than fear. Downstairs, Miracle sat alone in his private office, the glow of his laptop screen casting shadows across his face. Spread before him were files, dozens of them, financial records, legal contracts, newspaper clippings, all about Andrews Wills. On the surface, the man was untouchable, wealthy, respected, a so-called advocate for children's education and welfare. His name was attached to hospitals, scholarships, youth centers, but Miracle had learned long ago that the brightest public images often hid the darkest private sins. He clicked through a folder labeled Gracefield Orphanage 2015. His chest tightened. There she was. A photograph from a scholarship ceremony 6 years ago, a young girl in a wheelchair, smiling shyly as Miracle handed her an award for academic excellence. Her name was printed beneath the image, Benedicta Wills, age 18. He remembered that day. She'd been so quiet, so polite. When he asked her what she wanted to study, she'd whispered, "I want to write stories. Stories where people like me get to be heroes." He'd promised to help her. And then, 3 months later, she vanished. He'd asked the orphanage director what happened. The woman had looked uncomfortable, shuffling papers, avoiding his eyes. Her father came for her, she'd said he was taking her abroad. We haven't heard from her since. Miracle had tried to follow up, sent emails, made calls, but Andrews Wills was a wall of lawyers and deflection. Eventually, the trail went cold, and Miracle had always wondered. Now he knew. Andrews hadn't taken her abroad. He'd locked her away. Miracle's hands curled into fists. A soft buzz broke the silence. His phone lit up. It was his lawyer, David Brennan. "Talk to me," Miracle said. "I reviewed the documents Andrews's men brought," David replied, his voice tight. "They're convincing, very convincing. Whoever forged these knew what they were doing. If this goes to court, it'll be a fight." "How long?" "Weeks, maybe months." And in the meantime, if Andrews pushes hard enough with the right judge, he could get an emergency injunction. They could take her before we even get a hearing. Miracle's jaw tightened. That's not an option. Then we need something that changes the legal landscape immediately. Something that puts her outside his reach. Miracle was silent for a long moment. Then he said it. What if she's not his dependent anymore? David paused. What do you mean? What if she's legally protected under someone else, someone he can't touch? Miracle, what are you thinking? I'm thinking, Miracle said slowly, that if Benedicta were my wife, Andrews would have no claim, no guardianship, no authority. The line went dead silent. You're serious. Completely. Miracle. That's the only way to protect her right now. You said it yourself. If this drags out, he wins. But if she's married, the entire case collapses. David exhaled sharply. It's risky. If anyone questions the legitimacy, let them question it. By the time they do, she'll be safe. Another pause. I'll draw up the paperwork, David said finally. But Miracle, you need to talk to her first. She has to agree to this. I know. Miracle hung up and sat back in his chair, staring at the photo of 18-year-old Benedicta on his screen. She'd wanted to be a hero in her own story. Maybe it was time someone gave her that chance. Upstairs, Benedicta set the empty bowl aside and leaned back against the pillows. For the first time in years, her stomach was full. But her mind was louder than ever. She thought about her father, about the men outside, about the documents they carried and the lies they contained. She thought about Miracle, this stranger who'd pulled her out of the rain and spoken to her like she mattered. Why? Why would someone like him risk anything for someone like her? She didn't have an answer. But deep down, beneath the fear and the shame and the exhaustion, a small, fragile part of her wanted to believe it was real. Wanted to believe she wasn't as invisible as her father had made her feel. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said. The door opened. Miracle stepped inside. He looked different now, tired, tense, like he'd been carrying something heavy. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," she said quietly. "Mama Lucia brought me food." He nodded. "Good." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, but weighted. Benedicta searched his face. "They're still out there, aren't they?" "Yes, and they're not going to leave." "No." She swallowed hard. "So what happens now?" Miracle moved closer, but stopped a respectful distance away. His eyes held hers steady, serious, and something else she couldn't quite name. "I need to ask you something," he said quietly. Benedicta's heart began to race. "Okay." Miracle took a slow breath. "Benedicta, how far are you willing to go to stay free?" She didn't understand the question, but something in his tone told her the answer would change everything. Benedicta stared at him, her pulse hammering in her ears. "How far am I willing to go?" Miracle nodded slowly. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something she couldn't name. Determination, desperation, maybe both. "I spoke to my lawyer," he said carefully. "Your father's documents are convincing, too convincing. If this goes to court, it could take months, and in that time..." He hesitated. "Andrews could push for an emergency order. They could take you before we ever get a fair hearing." Benedicta's chest tightened. "So I have no chance." "I didn't say that." She looked up at him, confused. Miracle moved closer, crouching down so they were at eye level. His voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, something raw beneath the calm. "There's one way to protect you. Legally. Immediately." "What way?" He held her gaze. "Marriage." The word hung in the air, like a thunderclap. Benedicta blinked. Once, twice. Her brain struggled to process what he'd just said. I don't understand. If you're my wife..." "Miracle," explained slowly. "Andrews loses all legal claim over you. No guardianship, no authority. You'd be protected under my name, my resources, my legal standing. He couldn't touch you. Benedicta's hands began to shake. You're asking me to marry you? I'm offering you a way out. But, her voice cracked, you don't even know me. I know enough. No. She shook her head, panic rising. No, you don't. You don't know what I am, what I've been. Her voice broke entirely. I'm broken, Miracle. I can't even walk. I can't give you anything. I'm just... Stop. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through her spiral like a blade. Benedicta, listen to me. He leaned closer, his tone softer now, but no less intense. This isn't about what you can give me. This is about keeping you alive, keeping you free. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Why? She whispered. Why would you do this for me? Miracle's jaw tightened. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to say something deeper, older, something that had been buried for years. But instead, he just said, because no one else will. Benedicta covered her face with her hands, sobbing quietly. Miracle stayed where he was, close but not touching, giving her space to break without judgment. Finally, she lowered her hands and looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. What if it doesn't work? What if he finds a way anyway? Then we fight harder. And if people find out it's not real? Miracle's gaze didn't waver. It doesn't have to be real to be legal, and it doesn't have to be forever. Once you're safe, once Andrews is handled, you can walk away. No strings, no obligations. Benedicta's heart twisted. He was offering her an escape, a lifeline, but it felt too big, too much. I don't want to ruin your life, she whispered. You won't. How do you know? Miracle's expression softened, just slightly. Because you've already survived worse than anything I'm risking. The words hit her like a wave. She stared at him, this man who had every reason to walk away, to let her father's men take her, to pretend he'd never seen her trembling in the rain. But he hadn't. He was still here. Okay, she whispered. Miracle's eyes widened just a fraction. Okay, she nodded, her voice stronger now. Okay, I'll do it. 2 hours later, Benedicta sat in the back of Miracle's car, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The city blurred past the window, lights and shadows blending into something unreal. She felt like she was watching her life happen to someone else. Miracle sat beside her, silent but present. He hadn't said much since she agreed. Just made a few phone calls, arranged everything with the kind of efficiency that came from a life built on control. But now, in the quiet hum of the car, Benedicta could feel the weight of what they were about to do. Are you scared? She asked suddenly. Miracle glanced at her. No. You should be. My father, he destroys people. He can try. Benedicta looked down at her hands. I don't understand you. What don't you understand? Why you're not afraid. Miracle was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I've spent most of my life afraid of the wrong things. Losing money, losing control, losing respect. He paused. But losing someone who needed help? That's the kind of fear I can't live with. Benedicta's throat tightened. Before she could respond, the car slowed to a stop. She looked out the window. They were parked outside a small, unmarked building on the edge of the city. The sign above the door read, Grand Ridge City Registrar, 24-hour services. Her heart began to race. Miracle turned to her. Last chance to back out. Benedicta shook her head. I'm not backing out. You're sure? She met his eyes. I'm sure. He nodded once, then opened the door. Inside, the registrar's office was quiet, sterile. A single clerk sat behind a desk, looking half asleep until Miracle approached. We need to file for a marriage license, Miracle said calmly. Tonight. The clerk blinked. Sir, it's nearly midnight. Miracle placed an envelope on the desk. I'm aware. The clerk opened it. His eyes widened slightly at whatever was inside. Right. Of course. I'll get the forms. Benedicta watched the exchange in stunned silence. Within minutes, they were seated across from the clerk, pens in hand, papers spread before them. The clerk droned through the legal language: rights, responsibilities, declarations. Benedicta barely heard any of it. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. Miracle noticed. Without a word, he reached over and gently steadied her hand with his own. She looked up at him, startled. He didn't smile. But his eyes said everything. You're not alone. She took a breath and signed her name. Miracle signed next. The clerk stamped the document. Congratulations, he said flatly. You're married. Outside, the cool night air hit Benedicta's face like a slap. She stared down at the paper in her hands, the marriage certificate, official and binding. Her name, his name, linked. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Miracle stood beside her, silent. What happens now? She asked, quietly. Now, Miracle said, we go home. Home. The word felt foreign, but for the first time in 16 years, it didn't sound like a lie. Back at the Halcyon, Miracle led Benedicta to a private suite on the top floor, larger than the medical room, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. This is yours, he said, for as long as you need it. Benedicta wheeled herself inside, overwhelmed. Where will you stay? Next door. If you need anything, just call. She nodded slowly. Miracle turned to leave, but paused at the door. Benedicta. She looked back. You're not a burden, he said quietly. And you're not broken. Before she could respond, he was gone. Benedicta sat alone in the enormous room, staring out at the glittering city below. She was married. To a man she barely knew. A man who'd saved her life. And for the first time in years, she felt something she'd forgotten existed. Hope. But outside the Halcyon's gates, Wills sat in the back of his limousine, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it takes, he hissed. Find a way to get her back. She's mine. And no one takes what's mine. He hung up and smiled. Benedicta woke to sunlight streaming through sheer curtains, warm and golden. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The rain, the hotel, the marriage certificate. She sat up slowly, her heart thudding as she looked around the suite. Everything was untouched, perfectly clean, perfectly silent. It still didn't feel real. A soft knock on the door startled her. Come in, she said quietly. Mama Lucia entered, carrying a breakfast tray. Her smile was warm, maternal. Good morning, Mrs. Owens. Benedicta's breath caught. Mrs. Owens. She wasn't used to being called anything but a burden. You can call me Benedicta, she said softly. Mama Lucia set the tray down gently. Of course, baby. But you should know the staff's been told you're Mr. Owens' wife now. That means your family here. Benedicta's throat tightened. Family. She didn't know what that word meant anymore. Mama Lucia patted her hand. Eat up. You need your strength. After she left, Benedicta stared at the food. Fresh fruit, scrambled eggs, warm bread. It was more than she'd eaten in months. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, still half expecting someone to burst in and take it all away. Downstairs, Miracle sat in his office, surrounded by files and documents. He hadn't slept. His tie was loosened, his sleeves rolled up, his eyes sharp despite the exhaustion pulling at him. Julian stood across from him, arms crossed. We've got a problem, Julian said. Miracle didn't look up. Only one? Andrews is mobilizing. Fast. He's hired a PR firm. They're already spinning the narrative, claiming you manipulated a vulnerable, mentally ill woman into a sham marriage. Miracle's jaw clenched. He's also filing for an emergency psychiatric evaluation, Julian continued. Says Benedicta's not mentally competent to consent to marriage. If a judge agrees, the marriage could be annulled. and she'd be sent straight into his custody. Miracle's fist slammed onto the desk. Julian flinched but didn't back down. "What do you want me to do?" Miracle stood, pacing like a caged animal. "We need proof. Proof that Andrews has been abusing her. Proof that those documents were forged. Proof that she was never mentally ill, just imprisoned. That'll take time. Investigations. Testimonies. We don't have time." Miracle stopped pacing and turned to Julian, his voice dropping to something colder, sharper. "Dig into Andrew's past. I want to know every shady deal, every bribe, every skeleton. If he's buried bodies, I want to know where." Julian nodded. "On it." As he left, Miracle sank back into his chair, rubbing his temples. He pulled open a drawer and retrieved an old, worn folder. Inside was the photograph from 6 years ago, young Benedicta at the scholarship ceremony, smiling shyly. Beneath it was a letter, handwritten, in careful, looping script. "Dear Mr. Owens, thank you for the scholarship. No one's ever believed in me before. My father says I should be grateful just to be alive, but you made me feel like maybe I could be more than that. Maybe I could matter. I want to write stories someday. Stories where girls like me don't have to be saved. Where we get to be the heroes. Thank you for making me feel like that's possible. Benedicta." Miracle's chest ached as he read it again. He'd kept this letter for 6 years. He'd never forgotten her. And when she vanished, he'd searched. He'd called the orphanage dozens of times, sent investigators, tried to trace her. But Andrews had covered his tracks too well. Until now. Miracle closed the folder carefully and stood. It was time she knew the truth. He found her in the suite, sitting by the window, staring out at the city. She turned when she heard him enter, her expression cautious. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Like I'm living someone else's life," she admitted. Miracle almost smiled. "I know the feeling." He moved closer, but kept a respectful distance, holding the folder in his hands. "There's something I need to tell you," he said quietly. Benedicta's eyes flickered with worry. "What is it?" Miracle hesitated. Then he handed her the folder. She opened it slowly and froze. It was her, 18 years old, smiling, holding an award. And standing beside her was Miracle, younger but unmistakable. Her hands began to shake. I don't understand." "6 years ago," Miracle said gently, "I gave you a scholarship for academic excellence. You were at Gracefield Orphanage." Benedicta's breath hitched. I remember that day. I remember you. You wrote me a letter," Miracle continued, "thanking me. Telling me you wanted to be a writer." She stared at the letter in the folder, tears welling in her eyes. "I kept it," Miracle said, "and 3 months later, when you disappeared, I tried to find you. I called the orphanage, sent people to look for you. But your father told them you'd gone abroad, that you were being taken care of." Benedicta's face crumpled. "He lied," she whispered. "I know." She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. "He took me back to his house, locked me in a room, told everyone I was being privately educated." Her voice broke. "But I was just hidden, like I was something shameful." Miracle's fists clenched at his sides. "There's more," he said, his voice tight. He reached into the folder and pulled out another document, a medical proposal. Benedicta's eyes scanned it, confused. Then she saw the line, "Experimental Spinal Rehabilitation Surgery, funded by Miracle Owens Foundation, approved for patient Benedicta Wills, pending guardian consent." Her heart stopped. What is this?" "After I met you," Miracle said quietly, "I reached out to a medical team. They were developing a treatment, experimental, but promising. It could have helped you regain some mobility, maybe even walk again." Benedicta's hands trembled violently. "I offered to pay for everything," Miracle continued, his voice thick with suppressed rage. "Your father refused. Said you didn't need false hope. A sob tore out of her. He knew? She gasped. He knew you tried to help me. And she couldn't finish. Miracle knelt beside her chair, his voice breaking. I'm sorry. I should have fought harder. I should have... No. Benedicta shook her head, tears pouring down her face. You tried, and he stole it from me. She covered her face with her hands, her entire body shaking with grief and fury. Miracle stayed beside her, silent, letting her break. When she finally looked up, her eyes were red but fierce. He took everything from me, she whispered. My mother, my future, my body, my voice. She straightened in her chair, her jaw set. I want him to pay. Miracle's eyes darkened. Then let's make sure he does. That night, Benedicta couldn't sleep. She sat alone in the suite, staring at the letter she'd written years ago. Girls like me don't have to be saved. We get to be the heroes. She'd written those words when she still believed in fairness, in hope. Her father had tried to kill that hope, but Miracle had kept it alive. And now, for the first time in 16 years, Benedicta felt something dangerous bloom inside her chest. Not hope, rage. The next morning, Benedicta woke to voices outside her door. She wheeled herself closer and listened. Absolutely not. She's not ready for that. It was Miracle. His voice was calm, but firm. Sir, with respect, Julian replied. The press is already asking questions. Andrews is feeding them a narrative. If we don't get ahead of this... I said no. Silence. She's been through enough. Miracle continued, quieter now. I'm not parading her in front of cameras like some kind of proof. She's not a PR strategy. She's a person. Benedicta's chest tightened. No one had ever defended her like that. Not her father, not the staff at his house, not the people at the orphanage who looked the other way when she cried at night. She opened the door. Both men turned. Miracle's expression softened immediately. I'm sorry. Did we wake you? No, Benedicta said quietly. She looked at Julian. What did he mean? The press. Julian hesitated, glancing at Miracle. It's nothing you need to worry about, Miracle said quickly. Please don't do that, Benedicta said, her voice firmer now. Don't hide things from me. I've had enough of that. Miracle studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. Your father's spinning a story. He's telling the media I manipulated you, that you're not mentally stable, that the marriage is a sham. Benedicta's hands gripped the armrests of her wheelchair. And people believe him? Some do, Julian admitted. He's convincing, and he has money behind him. Benedicta looked down, shame creeping in. So I'm making everything worse for you. No. Miracle's voice was sharp. He stepped closer. Don't think that. Not for a second. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. But it's true, isn't it? If you'd just left me in the rain, none of this. Benedicta. He crouched down, meeting her gaze head-on. If I'd left you in the rain, I'd never forgive myself. Do you understand me? Her breath hitched. This isn't your fault, Miracle said, his voice low and intense. Your father is a monster, and monsters don't win just because they're loud. Benedicta swallowed hard, blinking back tears. Julian cleared his throat. I'll, give you two some space. He left quietly. Miracle stayed where he was, still crouched beside her. I know this is overwhelming, he said gently, but you're not alone in this. Not anymore. Benedicta's lip trembled. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Trust someone, she whispered. Everyone I ever trusted either left or hurt me. Miracle's expression softened with something that looked like pain. Then don't trust me yet, he said quietly. Just let me prove I'm different. She searched his face, looking for cracks, for lies, for the inevitable moment when he'd realize she wasn't worth the trouble. But all she saw was steady, unshakable resolve. Okay, she whispered. Later that afternoon, Miracle did something unexpected. He asked her to have lunch with him, not in some grand dining room, not with staff hovering, just the two of them. On the rooftop terrace of the Halcyon, surrounded by greenery and open sky. Benedicta wheeled herself to the table, stunned by the simplicity of it. Sandwiches, lemonade, a small vase with a single sunflower. "I didn't know what you liked," Miracle admitted a little awkwardly. "So I just guessed." Benedicta stared at the sunflower. "My mother loved sunflowers," she said softly. Miracle's eyes widened slightly. "I didn't know." "I can." "No." She shook her head quickly. It's perfect." They sat in silence for a moment, the city humming distantly below them. Then Miracle spoke. "Tell me about her. Your mother." Benedicta's throat tightened. No one had asked her that in years. "She was kind," Benedicta said quietly. "Even when my father was cold. She used to sneak into my room at night and read to me. Stories about brave women who didn't need saving." Miracle listened, his full attention on her. "After the accident," Benedicta continued, "she never looked at me like I was broken. She looked at me like I was still whole." Her voice cracked. "And when she died, I lost the only person who ever saw me that way." Miracle's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry," he said, and it sounded like he meant it. Benedicta wiped her eyes quickly. "What about you? Do you have family?" Miracle leaned back, his expression distant. "My parents died when I was 12. Car accident." Benedicta's heart clenched. "I'm so sorry. I was raised by my uncle after that. He wasn't warm, but he taught me how to survive, how to build something that couldn't be taken away." He paused. "I think that's why I do what I do. The foundations, the scholarships. I guess I'm trying to be for other people what I wish someone had been for me." Benedicta stared at him, seeing him differently now. He wasn't just powerful. He was wounded too. "You're a good man, Miracle Owens," she said softly. He looked at her, something raw, flickering in his eyes. "I'm trying to be." They spent the rest of the afternoon talking about books, about dreams, about the things they'd lost and the things they still hoped for. For the first time in years, Benedicta laughed. Really laughed. Miracle told her a story about a disastrous business meeting where he'd accidentally called a German investor by the wrong name for an entire hour. "He was too polite to correct me," Miracle said, shaking his head. "I only found out when his assistant sent a very passive-aggressive email the next day." Benedicta covered her mouth, giggling. Miracle watched her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You should do that more often," he said. "What?" "Laugh. It suits you." Benedicta's cheeks warmed. For a moment, the weight of everything, the fear, the trauma, the danger, lifted, and she felt like a person again. Not a burden, not broken, just Benedicta. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Miracle stood. "I should let you rest," he said. Benedicta nodded, but she didn't want him to leave. "Miracle?" He turned back. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For today. For everything." He smiled, small, genuine. "Anytime." As he walked toward the door, Benedicta called out again. "Miracle." He paused. "You already proved it." He looked at her, confused. "That you're different," she clarified, her voice soft but sure. Something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable, something real. He didn't say anything, but the way he looked at her said everything. That night, Benedicta lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her heart felt strange, light, fragile, like something inside her that had been frozen for years was finally starting to thaw. She thought about Miracle's smile, his laugh. The way he listened like her words actually mattered. And for the first time since her mother died, Benedicta wondered if maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be cared for. But downstairs, in the shadows of the Halcyon lobby, A man in a black suit watched the elevator Benedicta had taken up to her suite. He pulled out his phone and sent a message. "She's here," confirmed. Within seconds, a reply came through. "Good. We move tomorrow night." The man pocketed his phone and disappeared into the night. Benedicta woke to the sound of shattering glass. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she bolted upright in bed, disoriented, her breath coming in short gasps. Another crash, closer this time. She wheeled herself toward the door, her hands shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheels. "Miracle?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer. Panic flooded her veins. She opened the door and froze. The hallway was dark, too dark. The emergency lights that usually lined the corridor were off. And then she heard voices, angry, commanding. "She's on this floor. Find her." Benedicta's blood turned to ice. She slammed the door shut and locked it, her chest heaving. They were here, her father's men. She wheeled backward, her mind racing. There was no other exit, no fire escape she could reach. No phone in the room. Miracle had taken hers earlier to replace it with something more secure, and she hadn't gotten it back yet. She was trapped. A heavy thud hit the door. Then another. They were breaking in. Benedicta looked around frantically. The bathroom. She could hide in the bathroom, lock herself in, buy time, scream for help. The door splintered. She screamed. Two men burst into the room, dressed in black, their faces cold and professional. "There she is." No. Benedicta tried to wheel away, but one of the men grabbed the back of her chair and yanked it to a stop. "Let me go," she cried, her voice breaking. "Please, quiet," the man snapped. He pulled out a syringe. Benedicta's heart nearly stopped. "No, no, please, don't." The second man grabbed her arm, holding her still. She thrashed, screaming, tears streaming down her face. Miracle! Miracle was 3 floors down when he heard the scream. His blood went cold. He'd been in an emergency meeting with his security team, reviewing new intel on Andrew's movements. Julian had just confirmed that Andrews was planning something aggressive, but they didn't know what. Now they did. Miracle bolted toward the stairwell, his heart pounding. "Lock down the building!" he roared into his phone. "No one gets out!" He took the stairs, 3 at a time, his mind a storm of fury and fear. He should have seen this coming, should have protected her better, should have stayed closer. He burst onto her floor and saw the shattered door immediately. His stomach dropped. Benedicta. He sprinted down the hall and into the room, and found it empty. The wheelchair was overturned, the blanket torn off the bed. A syringe lay discarded on the floor. Miracle's vision blurred with rage. He grabbed his phone. "Julian." They took her. "Find them. We've got eyes on the service elevator." Julian's voice crackled back. 2 men. They're heading for the underground garage. Miracle didn't wait. He ran. In the elevator, Benedicta's world was spinning. Whatever they'd injected her with was working fast. Her limbs felt heavy, her vision blurred. She tried to speak, to fight, but her body wouldn't respond. One of the men was on the phone. "We have her." "Yeah. She's sedated. We'll have her at the facility within the hour." Facility. The word echoed in Benedicta's fading consciousness. No. Not again. Not back to being locked away. Erased. Forgotten. She tried to scream, but only a weak whimper escaped her lips. The elevator doors opened. Cold air hit her face. They lifted her out of the chair and carried her toward a black van idling in the shadows of the garage. Benedicta's heart shattered. She'd been so stupid, so naive. She'd actually let herself believe she could be safe, that someone could protect her, that she mattered. But she didn't. She never had. The van door slid open, and then put her down. The voice was a roar, deep, furious, shaking with barely restrained violence. The men froze. Miracle stood 20 feet away, flanked by 6 security officers, his chest heaving, his eyes blazing with a rage Benedicta had never seen before. "I said," Miracle repeated, his voice dropping to something lethal, "put her down." One of the men pulled a gun. Everything happened in seconds. Miracle's security moved like a unit, disarming, tackling, neutralizing the threat with brutal efficiency. The man holding Benedicta dropped her. She hit the ground hard, pain shooting through her side. Miracle was there in an instant, dropping to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her like he was afraid to touch her, afraid she'd break. "Benedicta, Benedicta, look at me." She tried, but her eyes were so heavy. "Stay with me," he begged, his voice cracking. "Please, stay with me." She wanted to. She wanted to tell him she was sorry, that she should have been more careful, that this was all her fault, but the darkness pulled her under. When Benedicta woke, she was back in the suite, but this time, Miracle was there. Sitting in a chair beside her bed, his head in his hands, his shoulders slumped with exhaustion. She stirred, and his head snapped up immediately. "Benedicta, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Miracle's face twisted with confusion. "What? I'm sorry," she repeated, tears slipping down her cheeks. I should have stayed alert. I should have—" "Stop." Miracle moved closer, his expression stricken. "This wasn't your fault." "Yes, it was." Her voice broke. "I'm a liability. I'm putting you in danger. I'm ruining everything." "You're not ruining anything." "I am," she shouted, her voice raw with pain. "Look at what's happening. Your hotel was invaded. Your people were hurt. All because of me, because your father is a monster." Miracle interrupted, his voice shaking. "Because the world failed you. But you are not the problem, Benedicta." She shook her head, sobbing. "You should have left me in the rain." Miracle flinched like she'd struck him. "Don't say that. It's true." "It's not. You don't understand." "Then make me understand." His shout echoed through the room. Benedicta froze, staring at him. Miracle's chest heaved. His eyes were red-rimmed, his jaw tight. "Do you think I saved you out of pity?" he asked, his voice quieter now but no less intense. "Do you think I married you because I felt sorry for you?" Benedicta didn't answer. "I saved you," Miracle said, his voice breaking, "because the thought of losing you again was unbearable." Her breath caught. "I lost you once, Benedicta. 6 years ago. When you disappeared, I looked for you. I searched for months. And when I couldn't find you, it broke something in me." Tears streamed down his face now. "So no," he said, his voice raw. "I don't regret pulling you out of that rain. I don't regret marrying you. And I sure as hell don't regret fighting for you." Benedicta stared at him, her heart shattering and mending all at once. "But if you want to leave," Miracle continued, his voice barely a whisper, "if you want to walk away from this from me, I won't stop you." Silence filled the room. Benedicta's hands trembled in her lap. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. Miracle's eyes closed, relief washing over his face. "But I'm scared," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I'm scared that the more I let myself believe this is real, the more it's going to hurt when it's taken away." Miracle opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her. "Then let me prove to you," he said softly, "that I'm not going anywhere." But outside the Halcyon, Wills stood in the back of his limousine, phone pressed to his ear, his face twisted with fury. "They failed?" he hissed. "Yes, sir. Owens's security was too fast." Andrew's grip tightened on the phone. "Then we go public. I want every news outlet, every journalist, every blogger talking about how Miracle Owens manipulated my mentally ill daughter into marriage. I want him destroyed." "Understood, sir." Andrews hung up and stared out the window at the glowing Halcyon in the distance. "You want to protect her, Owens," he muttered, Let's see how long you last when the whole world turns against you. The next morning, the world exploded. Benedicta woke to the sound of Miracle's voice, low, tense, deadly calm, coming from the suite's living area. She wheeled herself to the doorway and stopped. Miracle stood in front of the television, his fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tight as stone. On the screen, her father's face filled the frame. Andrews Wills sat in an impeccably tailored suit, his expression one of calculated sorrow. The headline beneath him read, "Billionaire accused of exploiting disabled woman in sham marriage." Benedicta's stomach dropped. The news anchor's voice was smooth, professional, damning. "Mr. Wills claims his daughter, Benedicta, suffers from severe psychological trauma and is not mentally competent to consent to marriage. He's calling for an immediate investigation into Miracle Owens, alleging manipulation, coercion, and exploitation of a vulnerable individual." The camera cut to Andrews. "My daughter is sick," he said, his voice heavy with false emotion. "She's been struggling for years, and this man, this opportunist, took advantage of her condition for his own gain. I just want my little girl back, safe, where she belongs." Benedicta felt like she'd been punched in the chest. Miracle turned off the television and stood in silence, his back to her. "Miracle," she whispered. He didn't turn around. "They're saying I manipulated you," he said quietly. "That I'm using you. That's not true. I know it's not true." His voice was strained. "But the world doesn't know that, and your father just made sure they never will." Benedicta wheeled closer. "So what do we do?" Miracle finally turned to face her. His eyes were dark, haunted. "We have two choices," he said. "We fight this publicly, which means you'll be dragged through the media, questioned, scrutinized, humiliated. Every part of your life will be dissected." Benedicta's hands trembled. "Or," she whispered. Miracle's expression softened with something that looked like grief. "Or I annul the marriage, publicly apologize, say I made a mistake, let your father take you back." The words hit her like ice water. You'd give me back to him?" "No." Miracle's voice broke. "God, no. But if it's what keeps you safe, if it's what stops this from destroying you." "It won't keep me safe," Benedicta said, her voice rising. "He'll lock me away. You know that. You've seen the documents. The facility he wants to send me to, I'll disappear, Miracle, forever." "Then we fight," Miracle said, his voice hard. "But I need you to understand what that means. It means war. It means your father will come at us with everything he has. It means the entire world will be watching." Benedicta's breath came in shallow gasps. She looked down at her hands, scarred, shaking, weak. Her whole life, she'd been told she was broken, useless, a burden. Her father had spent 16 years convincing her she didn't deserve to exist, and part of her still believed it. "What if they're right?" she whispered. Miracle's eyes widened. "What? What if I am too damaged? What if I'm not strong enough to fight this?" "Benedicta, maybe it would be easier if I just gave up." "Don't." Miracle crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt in front of her wheelchair, his hands gripping the armrests, his face inches from hers. "Don't you dare say that." Tears streamed down her face. "I'm so tired, Miracle," she sobbed. "I'm so tired of fighting, of being afraid, of feeling like I'm not enough." Miracle's own eyes glistened. "You are enough," he said fiercely. "You've always been enough. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life proving that to you, if I have to." Benedicta shook her head. "Why? Why do you care so much?" Miracle hesitated. Then, slowly, he reached up and cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle, reverent. "Because when I saw you 6 years ago," he said, his voice breaking, "sitting in that wheelchair with a smile that could light up a room, writing about girls who didn't need saving, I saw someone braver than anyone I'd ever met." Benedicta's breath hitched. "And when you disappeared, Miracle continued. I felt like I'd failed the one person who actually deserved to be protected. So no, Benedicta. I didn't save you out of pity. I saved you because losing you the first time almost broke me, and I'm not losing you again. Benedicta stared at him, her heart thundering in her chest. I'm falling in love with you, Miracle whispered, and I don't care if that's too soon or too complicated or too reckless. It's the truth. Benedicta couldn't breathe. No one had ever said those words to her. Not her father, not anyone. You don't have to say it back, Miracle said quickly, pulling away slightly. I just needed you to know. Because whatever choice you make, I'm with you. If you want to fight, I'll fight beside you. If you want to run, I'll run with you. But please, Benedicta, don't give up. She looked at him, this man who'd pulled her out of the rain, married her to save her life, and was now offering her something she'd never had. A choice. Not someone deciding for her. Not someone controlling her. A real, honest choice. And in that moment, something inside Benedicta shifted. She thought about her mother, about the stories she used to read. Brave women who didn't need saving. Maybe she couldn't walk. Maybe the world saw her as broken, but she wasn't broken. She was still here, still breathing, still fighting. I want to fight, she said, her voice trembling but sure. Miracle's eyes widened. I want to fight, she repeated, stronger this time. I want to stand up to my father. I want the world to know what he did to me. And I want, her voice broke, I want to stop being afraid. Miracle's face broke into something between a smile and a sob. Then we fight, he said. Benedicta nodded, and for the first time in her life, she felt like a hero in her own story. Within the hour, Miracle's team assembled. Lawyers, PR specialists, investigators. But Miracle made one thing clear. This isn't about protecting my reputation, he said. This is about telling the truth. Benedicta's truth, and we're going to make damn sure the world listens. Julian pulled up a file on the screen, evidence they'd been gathering for days. Financial records showing Andrews had embezzled funds from his own charity. Testimonies from former staff members who witnessed Benedicta's imprisonment. Medical records proving the psychiatric evaluations were forged. And a recording. Julian hit play. Andrews' voice filled the room. Cold and cutting. Get rid of her. I don't care how. Just make sure no one ever asks about her again. Benedicta's hands flew to her mouth. We got this 2 days ago, Julian said quietly, from a staff member who finally came forward. Miracle looked at Benedicta. This is enough to destroy him, but only if you're ready. Benedicta stared at the screen. Her father's voice, his cruelty, his hatred, all of it, undeniable. She took a deep breath. I'm ready. That evening, Miracle held a press conference. Benedicta sat beside him, her heart pounding, her hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. Miracle raised a hand, and the room fell silent. I'm not here to defend myself, he said. I'm here to tell you the truth about Andrews Wills and about what he did to his daughter. He gestured to Benedicta. She swallowed hard. And then, for the first time in 16 years, Benedicta Wills spoke her truth. My name is Benedicta, she said, her voice shaking but clear. And my father tried to erase me. The room went dead silent. He locked me away. He silenced me. He told the world I didn't exist. And when I finally escaped, he tried to have me institutionalized so I could never tell anyone what he did. Her voice grew stronger. But I'm here. I'm alive. And I'm not hiding anymore. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't stop. Miracle Owens didn't manipulate me. He saved me, and I will spend the rest of my life grateful for that. She looked at Miracle. I'm not his victim, she said. I'm his wife. And I chose that. Me. The room erupted. If you've ever felt invisible, unwanted, or silenced, drop a comment below. You're not alone. And your story matters. 3 months later, the courtroom was silent. Benedicta sat beside Miracle at the defendant's table, her hands folded in her lap, her spine straight. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her face calm. Across the aisle, Andrews Wills sat stiff and pale, flanked by his lawyers. His empire was crumbling. The recordings had gone viral. Former employees had come forward. Financial audits revealed years of embezzlement, fraud, and abuse. But this trial wasn't about money. It was about her. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, looked down at the documents before her. "Mr. Wills," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "You stand accused of unlawful imprisonment, falsifying medical records, forgery, and emotional abuse of your daughter, Benedicta Wills Owens." Benedicta's heart swelled at the sound of her full name. Wills Owens. She wasn't just his anymore. She belonged to herself. The judge continued. "The evidence presented is overwhelming, the testimonies are consistent, and the recordings are damning." Andrews stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched. "It is the ruling of this court," the judge said, "that Andrews Wills is guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Benedicta closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. Miracle reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "It's over," he whispered. She nodded, unable to speak. The judge banged her gavel. "Mr. Wills, you are hereby sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Additionally, all parental rights are permanently revoked. You are forbidden from contacting Miss Wills Owens in any form for the rest of your life." Andrew's face twisted with rage. He turned and locked eyes with Benedicta. For a moment, she saw it, the hatred, the bitterness, the same cold disdain he'd shown her all her life. But this time, she didn't flinch. She met his gaze and smiled. Andrews looked away first. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of reporters swarmed them. Microphones thrust forward. Cameras flashed. "Mrs. Owens, how do you feel about the verdict?" "Benedicta, what's next for you?" Miracle's security moved to shield her, but Benedicta raised a hand. "It's okay," she said softly. She wheeled herself forward, and the crowd quieted. "I feel," she paused, searching for the right word. "Free." Her voice was steady now, strong. "For 16 years, I was told I didn't matter, that I was a burden, a mistake, something to be hidden away and forgotten." She looked directly into the cameras. "But I'm still here, and I matter." A reporter called out, "What do you want people to know?" Benedicta took a breath. "I want people to know that your worth isn't determined by the people who hurt you, that being broken doesn't mean you can't be whole, and that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the one you were born into." She glanced back at Miracle, who stood a few feet behind her, watching her with quiet pride. "I was rescued," she said, "but I also rescued myself." The crowd erupted in applause. 6 months later, Benedicta sat on a stage in front of 300 people. The banner behind her read, "Rise Foundation, empowering voices, restoring hope." It was her foundation, built with Miracle's support but driven by her vision. A non-profit dedicated to helping disabled children who'd been abandoned, abused, or silenced. She'd spent the last 6 months traveling, speaking, meeting families who had stories like hers. And today, she was giving her first keynote speech. Miracle sat in the front row, his eyes never leaving her. Benedicta gripped the microphone, her heart pounding. "My name is Benedicta Wills Owens," she began, "and I'm not supposed to be here." The room was silent. "According to my father, I was supposed to disappear. According to the world, I was supposed to be invisible. According to everyone who looked at this wheelchair, I was supposed to be weak." She paused. "But here's what they didn't know." Her voice grew stronger. "Strength isn't about walking. It's about standing up even when the world tries to keep you down. It's about speaking even when they tell you to be quiet. It's about surviving even when they want you to vanish. Tears glistened in the eyes of several audience members. "I survived," Benedicta said, her voice breaking with emotion. "And if you're listening to this, if you've ever been told you don't matter, I need you to hear me." She leaned forward. "You do matter. You are seen. And your story is not over." The room erupted in applause. People stood. Some were crying. Others were cheering. Benedicta looked out at them, overwhelmed, tears streaming down her face. And then she looked at Miracle. He was standing too, clapping, his face filled with something that looked like awe. She mouthed the words, "Thank you." He mouthed back, "I love you." That night, back at their home, a beautiful, accessible house they'd designed together, Benedicta sat by the window, staring out at the city lights. Miracle came up behind her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You were incredible today," he said softly. She smiled. "I was terrified. You didn't show it." She turned to look at him. "I had a good teacher." Miracle crouched down beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "Benedicta," he said quietly, "I need to tell you something." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Benedicta's breath caught. "I know we're already married," Miracle said, a small smile tugging at his lips, "but that marriage was born out of survival, out of fear." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, beautiful. "I want to marry you again," Miracle said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Because I love you. Because you are the strongest, bravest, most incredible person I've ever known." Tears poured down Benedicta's face. "Will you marry me, Benedicta?" he asked. "For real this time?" She nodded, unable to speak. Miracle slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her hand. Then he stood, pulled her into his arms, and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. Because to him, she was. 1 year later, Benedicta stood at a podium. After months of experimental therapy Miracle had funded, she'd regained partial mobility. She couldn't walk far, and she still used her wheelchair most of the time. But today, for this moment, she stood. The auditorium was packed. Hundreds of children disabled, fostered, forgotten, sat in the audience, looking up at her with wide, hopeful eyes. "My name is Benedicta Wills Owens," she said, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "And I used to believe I was a mistake." She smiled. "But I'm not a mistake. And neither are you." She looked out at the faces staring back at her. "You are loved. You are seen. And you are heroes in your own stories." The children erupted in applause. Benedicta's eyes filled with tears as she looked to the side of the stage where Miracle stood, clapping, his face filled with pride and love. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one trembling in the rain, convinced the world had forgotten her. And she thought about the woman she'd become, not in spite of her pain, but because of it. She'd been rejected by her father, but she'd been chosen by love. She'd been silenced by the world, but she'd found her voice, and she'd been told she was broken. But she had risen, whole and unshaken. As the applause thundered around her, Benedicta closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not of desperation this time, but of gratitude. "Thank you for not letting me disappear." And somewhere, in the warmth of that moment, she felt her mother's presence, smiling, proud, free. What's one thing you've survived that the world told you would break you? Share your story below. Someone needs to hear it.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you love this story, you will surely enjoy the next one. It's crazier and more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.